Why red and blue namespaces, and can we recommend a starter tech stack from the 51 vendors here? Take 0.
This video is sponsored by Fuse.
First off, let's start here. One of the things we got to start with here is our stack. Everything has got to be in the context of the automation stack, all right? You guys should have seen this a million times. All right, Dylan.
Yes.
Let's talk where we've got a plant. We've already walked it through. We've taken the inventory. We've taken the network inventory, and we've decided, hey, we're going to go network address translation to these 2 production lines, and we are going to find a low-hanging fruit solution that we're going to build. And we've asked the question, what are you guys good at? What are you bad at? What's missing? And what they've said to us is, we're really good at fighting fires, we're really bad at predicting problems, and what's missing is access to the data that'll help us predict problems. There's some executive in the room who said we want to do predictive analytics, and we've ignored him, okay? We've ignored the predictive analytics guy, all right? We've had some executive in the room who said we want to be AI first. We've also ignored him. We smiled while we ignored him, but we ignored him too, okay? And we have focused on, okay, why don't you tell us why you want to be digital? We'll provide the architecture, and we'll provide the minimum technical requirements. And they say, the reason we want to be digital is because we want to enable our people to solve business problems with data. And we've said, actually, why don't we build a digital infrastructure so they can solve their problems in service of the business's problems? And they said, yes, we're on board. All right, we've got our use case, and we've got our 2 production lines.
The problem we're trying to solve is that we don't even know what problems we need to solve.
Correct. The problem is we don't even know where to start. So what we've done is we've identified, they've got a production line, and we've asked the question, how many units comes off this production line in a year? And they say we do 100,000, let's go a nice round number. They do 120,000 units, which is 10,000 units a month. They do 120,000 units a year off this, and we go, why is it you don't do 240,000? That's the first question we ask them. Why is it not 240,000? And oftentimes they will come back with the theoretical capacity of the production line. I always love this line, the theoretical capacity. Who the fuck came up with the theoretical capacity? The guy with the stopwatch? The guy with the stopwatch realizes that that's not theoretical, right? He measured the capacity. All right, so they've got a theoretical capacity of 140,000, but they don't do a very good job. So they do 120,000 a year. And we've decided that we're going to give them insight into why it is they don't do 240,000 in a year. That's our goal. Our goal is to say, you can actually do 240,000, and the reason we know this is because Dylan and I do MES systems. If they're doing 120,000 units in a year, what is the average OEE calculation when you first start collecting OEE digitally in a manufacturer? It's in the 30s, correct. It's in the 30s. So if we go from, let's say it's 37 is the average, it's right around 37, we're going to be able to operate under the assumption they're going to be in the 30s on OEE. Now, we'll be screwed if they're actually in the 80s, but they would also be a unicorn, so we're not worried about that, all right? And we know we're going to go, the problem we're going to solve is we're going to give them their digital infrastructure, and we're going to give them insight. That's the problem they're asking us to solve, but we're going to go, no, the problem we're really going to solve is we're going to tell you why it is you're not doing 240 in a year. We're not going to ask them for permission. Why is that? Because there's someone in the room getting paid because they're doing a good job doing 120. And if you do 240, is that person going to like you? If they're the director in charge of the budget that's paying you to do the solution, are they going to make sure that you don't get paid and get you the fuck out of there in a heartbeat? Absolutely. Does anybody disagree with that? Or does everyone go, no, the director would... The director who's been collecting a bonus for the last 6 years on 120,000 units a year, he's absolutely going to be excited that it now magically can do 240. Does anybody disagree? Okay, because I have gotten more directors fired over what we're about to do right here than I care to count, right? So now we're going to do that. So first off, where do we start? What are we going to do here? So we've got connectivity to the production line. So we're connected. We've done network address translation, but we're not collecting any data off the production line. Let's walk through it.
Yeah. So first thing we got to do is figure out what the data is. So we've connected to it, we've got the network, what is the data, where does it live, what controllers is it, and then from there, what protocols do they use?
All right, so what we're gonna say is this is a 5-cell production line, and that 5-cell production line, we're using Q-series Omron PLCs,
Okay.
So we're gonna pick Q-series for a couple of reasons. Number one, we'll have a technical issue with UDP versus TCP. Q-series is a UDP, all right, John Weber's like, yep, Walker knows his shit. All right, so we're gonna do Q-series PLCs because we're gonna run into a technical issue there. We'll have to jump that hurdle, okay? A lot of engineers will run into problems on the Q-series PLC, but we got 5 Q-series PLCs, actually, let's say 4.
Okay.
Q-series Omrons, all right? And inside those Q-series PLCs is a lot of process data, okay? So mostly analog and discrete values. There isn't any abstracted values. We have 400 discrete alarms, no line state.
So 400 discrete alarms, process the data, discrete and analog, nothing instantiated yet, so I'm assuming no state controllers or anything of that
No
nature.
state control whatsoever. All right, so what do we do here?
So the first question is protocols, UDP versus TCP.
Yep.
So then we need to figure out from our list of vendors who supports the Q-series protocols from a native driver perspective.
All right, yell out a name. Who should we use to collect the data? There's a reason I picked the Q-series and I didn't pick a ControlLogix, because that would immediately steer us towards ignition. If we pick the Q-series, we're going, it's a no-brainer, we gotta land ignition, because it's gonna talk directly to the PLC. Not that an ignition gateway will not talk to a Q-series PLC. It will talk to a Q-series PLC, but not optimally. So we've got to use a different tool to do this, okay? So what do we land? What do we decide to pull the data out? What are we going to use?
So before
What are you going to use?
What we're going to use is I'm going to go through and evaluate every piece of this, and I'm going to go, some of the 3 ones that come to mind immediately, then we can just start discounting things from there, is you've got the traditional option of Kepware.
Yep.
You've got...
By the way, 5 years ago, Kepware is the only answer, in my opinion.
You've got the easy answer in Ignition.
Yep.
And you've got the incumbent and the new answer in Litmus.
And we're going to go with Litmus. Why are we going to go with Litmus, gang? Why are we going to pick Litmus here? Why would I pick Litmus? Why is it I'm going to use Litmus to talk to the Q-series? Right there. Here we go. So,
and as we're choosing that, part of the process is going to be not just what connects to these PLCs, but taking inventory of what else is on the floor and what is going to be phase 2, phase 3, and what might be phase 5. The further out you get, the less perfect you need to be. But you need to have a plan, because you don't want 10 different vendors doing device connectivity. You don't want too many MSAs, you don't want too many vendors to onboard, and too many vendors to manage relationships with. So we need to try to find, that to the best of our ability, the vendor that's going to grow with us to the largest extent. And because of Litmus's extended device driver capacity, even more so, Ignition's really good with process industries, it's really good with PLC-centric pieces, but once we start getting into more specialized machines, more unique protocols, and things like robots and CNCs, we start to need a more robust layer.
all right. Then what we're going to do is we're going to build blue namespaces. And those blue namespaces are going to be manifestations of the raw data in each PLC. He would call it red, I'm calling it blue. Blue is the unstructured.
At this point, I call this blue.
Okay, we're pulling unstructured data into this blue box. So we've got blue here, okay? However, I may create a red namespace, which is an instantiation of the description of the asset, okay? So I create a red namespace underneath each of A, B, C, and D, and that red namespace might be asset ID, it might be a serial number, it might be manufacturer, it might be install date, it might be, I will define the namespace as 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 parameters that lands inside of every asset. That's a red namespace. It's universal across the entire infrastructure. The blue namespace is unique to the asset. There are 3 types of namespaces: descriptive, functional, informative. Descriptive hardly ever changes, they instantiate. Functional is basically everything. OEE is a functional namespace. Control is a namespace. Changeover is a namespace. Okay? But also, Walker's test namespace for trying to determine how much electricity we're using per glass jar in the furnace in my glass manufactory is a blue namespace. But we may decide to promote that to a red namespace across all of our furnaces if we do it right. All right, so we got litmus for our connectivity. We all agree that this is living inside of ignition. So this would be ignition here. Why do we use ignition? Because it's a platform for solving problems. We can also build our initial unified namespace inside of ignition. But where would we scale to? Here are all the places I would scale. I would put TatSoft out on the production lines. Eventually, I'm either going to use Litmus and or HiByte for data operations out here. I'm going to put Google Cloud Services up here to stream my data. I'm going to offshoot my namespace to HiveMQ as I scale. Those are all the real products I would use in this case. And anybody who's seen me teach knows that this is what we, and by the way, that's not inclusive. That's not exactly what you should use. It's what I use. But to start, the first thing I do is install Docker and Docker Compose on the server. Then I install Portainer. Then I install a Docker Compose stack that just has some analytical containers in it. Then I deploy Ignition. Then I deploy Postgres. Then I deploy Litmus. That is my starting development stack, 100% of the time. All right. Anything else you want to say about red and blue namespaces here?
So I think there might be a difference in terminology here, not intent.
Yep.
This right here, when we started, when we first made that for the first project without permission, I call that blue.
Correct. Until we make it red.
Once the enterprise has said, we're going to use this to solve all of our problems in more places in a standardized way, this whole namespace here is now red. That blue is red, and now this here is governed. So now everywhere we use this namespace, we know that it came from this type of data through this type of platform,
this type of PLC,
through this type of PLC, in that way. So that when this goes up higher in the stack to, say, Google Cloud, now we know where it came from, why it came from, and how it came from, so that we can make use of it at the enterprise layer.
Right. This would look like function dot metadata dot metadata dot metadata dot metadata.
Yep. And the importance there is traceability and quality through metadata.
Here's the most important thing. The most important thing is the 1% and the 1 and 99% rule. Okay? One of the biggest challenges we have is we have people in here with very advanced digital maturity, and we have people who are brand new. We have questions in here that they're coming from people who are brand new to digital transformation. It's basically Chinese to them. And our answers have to work for all of you. Okay? So I want to talk about the 1% and the 99% functional capability. The biggest mistake you can make as an engineer or as a product, all you OEMs who are in here listening to me, here's the thing that drives me the craziest, the most about you, 3 things. Number 1, you don't talk about solutions and problems enough. You don't measure solutions and problems. You measure leads and conversions. Stop doing that. It's stupid. We don't do that in our companies. Everybody wants to know why I'm as rich as I am. It's because I don't focus on the money. Anybody who works for me will tell you I don't focus on the money, ever. Every single person here will tell you. I focus on solutions and problems. That's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is you're all terrible at describing what your product does. Problem number 3, you're really bad at collecting from your customers the 1%. What does the iPhone do?
Hey, Walker.
Hold on, I know we're over. What does the iPhone do? This is an important conversation. It takes calls. Everybody's got a smartphone. Every single person, 100% of you have a smartphone right now. And you did not buy it for the 100% of its capability. You bought it for 1%. Apple mastered the art of selling you the 1%. Nice, clean, touchscreen, beautiful, pretty app store. And you assumed that the phone worked and you could text message. But it does so much more. You can write Python on here. You can connect it to an MQTT broker. You can track your kids. You can manipulate your portfolio. You can plan your vacation. You can pay your bills. It's insight into all of human knowledge. But they don't sell insight into all of human knowledge. They sell a 1% feature. When you get started in digital transformation, sell the 1%. Insight into current state. Where are we right now? And how do you sell insight into current state? Reveal to your organization that they're blind by asking questions. Which assets are running right now? Just ask that question in a meeting. How do we know what's running? How do we know what work order is coming up next? How do we know whether or not that work order is the one that we should start next? Start little. Litmus, connectivity, ignition, or pick a different platform. You can use TatSoft here. You can use WinCCOA here. Okay? Any other comments, questions, concerns?
And this is, if our starting point is starting from connecting to the data in the PLCs on the plant floor, it is, as we said here, litmus to ignition up the stack. The other angle of problems is if we are looking at this from the top down, and we need to get data from our ERP, our quality management, our supply chain, that's where we get things like Fuse, and then when we need to bring in the plant floor, we get litmus, we get ignition, and these two angles come together, but that might be a future video.
Semiconductor, semiconductor, biomedical, this is gonna be critical manufacturing. It's not gonna be ignition there, okay? So the answer, it's a risky answer for us, okay? Because every vendor here is here for a reason, they deserve to be here, and if you work with any of the vendors here, rest assured that they are going to deliver on your problems. Just make sure that you come to that conclusion through questions, statements, answers, and due diligence.
Every vendor has a unique solution to a unique problem, and every end user has a unique problem.
That's right.
And that is why everything we recommend here is an example of what could be, not what's necessary perfect for you.
All right, and like, subscribe, comment down below. Thank you for being here from Prove It 2026. We will talk about the e-commerce website coming up here shortly in a later, I'll do it in the fireside chat. Thank you guys for being here.